Hi everybody, I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Garry Kasparov, who's of course former multiple-time world champion. You're also the founder of the New Democracy Initiative. We're here at the Milken Institute Global Conference. First of all, Garry, welcome. And where are we right now, since you've been talking about democracy and what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia? Are you optimistic, if it's a war of attrition, that the West will win, the Ukraine will win?
I believe Ukraine will win, but I'm very cautious using the word optimistic, because as we speak, Russia continues its murderous war, its genocide. Most of the Russian attacks conducted at night to maximize the damage and the victim, the casualties among civilians. And let's not forget, I'm Russian.
Right.
I've been opposing Putin for ages. My first article warning about Putin dated January 4, 2001 in the Wall Street Journal. And ever since, I had dozens and dozens of articles, speeches, and even the book in 2015, Winter's Coming, more or less predicting what would happen next. Because I just listened to Putin, and I knew that dictators, while they always lie about what they have done, very often they tell us exactly what they're going to do. As Hitler's Mein Kampf was a blueprint for heinous crimes he committed, Putin was very open about his ideas. His dream to restore Soviet Empire, it was him saying back in 2005, the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. And in 2007, feeling strong enough and emboldened, he told bluntly to the leaders of the free world, including Bush 43, that NATO must go back to 1997 borders. So I had no doubts that Putin would continue his aggressive policies until he stopped. It's tragic that while every sign was on the wall, the free world preferred to look the other side and just always, talking about compromises, finding common ground. And even today, 15 months into this horrible war, actually it's the full-fledged invasion, because war started in 2014 with annexation of Crimea. There's still noises from different quarters, and it's not just China or Brazil. It's also here in America or in Europe. We hear voices, maybe you can compromise.
Give a little piece.
No, but you cannot do any peace agreement at the cost of Ukrainians. And 90+% of Ukrainian people, despite all the suffering and the bloodshed, they are willing to fight to restore the territorial integrity and sovereignty of their country.
Now, the tea leaves that we can still read about, Putin basically would suggest that there's no backing down for him at this point. So what do you see as the end game? Because you're talking to a lot of people over there. Even what's the mood in Russia?
I hate telling people bad news, but unfortunately, this war will not end as long as Putin stays in power. Because for Putin, as you said, he burned all the bridges. He knows that. And he will continue as long as he has resources to conduct this war. So the only way to end the war is to liberate Ukraine. So that's why we should forget about these negotiations, giving a little bit of Ukraine, leaving Crimea in the Russian hands. The only liberation of Crimea will start liberation of Russia from Putin's fascism. And that's why I'm annoyed to see that the free world is still playing games or delaying supply of weapons, badly needed weapons to Ukraine to win the war. Do I want peace? Absolutely. But the problem is the peace will not visit or come back to this region. It's not just Ukraine, but the whole Eastern Europe or Europe at large, as long as Putin stays in power, because he knows war is the only justification of his endless rule.
I noticed one of the other people here at the conference is Mikhail Khodorkovsky. You think about some of the people who've suffered poisoning, whether that's related to the Kremlin or not. Do you ever feel personal risk for what you're doing, and does that give you pause?
Look, of course, I did feel personal risk. I do feel personal risk, but You mentioned Michael Khodorkovsky, a very good friend of mine, an ally. He will be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we're working together now, trying to offer our country a chance to come back to the family of civilized nations. But when you mention Khodorkovsky or Alexei Navalny or Volodya Kara-Murza,
yeah,
all friends and allies, or we can recall great Boris Nemtsov, late Boris Nemtsov, killed in 2015 in front of Kremlin, another great leader of Russian opposition. So my risk is incompatible. So I'm here. I'm sitting here in LA talking to you while Navalny and Kara-Murza are just and thousands of other political prisoners.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, Russia has thousands of political prisoners. We don't know even the exact number because people get arrested almost every day now for a tweet. You put a tweet, anything in social media. Even, there was an arrest. The woman, she just ran a bakery. And she was arrested for, obviously she made a sign, a cake that had blue and yellow colors. And it's amazing that it says, I grew up in the Soviet Union, and on May 1st, today is May 1st, we had these demonstrations, and you say peace. So today, if you go with peace, I mean, you go to jail, you cannot say peace. So you cannot say stop the war. This is, it's Kafka, Orwell, Zamyatin. So Putin reconstructed this, sort of the worst fears of these dystopian books. And also, somehow Putin regime combined the worst traits of Russian history, going back to the cruelty of the Golden Horde, or messianic concept of Byzantine Empire, all-powerful tsars,
yeah,
and then Soviet mythology, KGB arrogance in handling global geopolitical affairs, and it's all like brought together, glued by his beliefs that might is right. He grew up in Leningrad, it's like a street fighter.
But it's not unique to Russia. What's interesting when you look at your new democracy initiative, we're seeing obviously that sort of, I'll call it strongman politics. Maybe there's a woman in there. In countries in Europe, we've seen it in this country. What do you make of that?
That was the idea behind creating the democracy initiative back in 2017. Addressing the threats to democracy coming from fringes. You have on the left, you had attacks on private property and market economy. On the right, attack on liberal democracy, on the foundation of liberal democracy, looking for a strong man to solve the problems. And the plan that I laid down was to use experienced people like me or many other dissidents from all over the world to actually tell Americans that democracy is worth fighting for. Democracy doesn't exist without your participation.
Yeah.
Don't take it for granted. I think that's one of the problems in America, that is many things that constituted the American democracy have been treated as air. It's here. It was here. It is here. It will be here. No, absolutely not. You have to be active. You have to defend democracy if necessary. And events in America in the last few years, and of course, culminated in January 6th, demonstrate that you can't let it go just automatically.